Hi, everybody. Rather than tell you about all my qualifications, everybody just stand up and look up at the ceiling, give yourself a good stretch. You're 2 hours in, and there's been a lot of great content shared, but I want you in tip-top shape to hear what I have to say here about internal linking. So, hope you've gotten a good stretch and that you're ready to go. So here we go. First, I want to say, when we talk about internal value, we generally talk about things in terms of a rank score, with 0 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. Now, if you're not familiar with how internal links really impact a site, then you may want to go and check out this webinar from last year with Dixon Jones and Julie Joyce, which was sponsored by OnCrawl. So that was a great, great background. And then also consider that when any tool that's out there that gives a rank score for internal links, they're typically basing it on the Wikipedia definition of Google PageRank, which we know for a fact is not exactly what they use today, but is probably the closest approximation any of these tools can get to. So that being said, like everything in SEO, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, given that sometimes those metrics are not exactly what we would want them to be. If we could perfectly reverse engineer Google's algorithm, well, then we'd all be ranking #1 all the time, and we wouldn't even need sessions like this. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the kind of old way versus new way of thinking with internal page rank. And I'm sure you all have heard that everything should be no more than 3 clicks from the home page. That's sort of nonsense, really. And what we're more after is this new way, and it's not really new. It's just about creating a clearly defined architecture. It's kind of hard to see in these pictures, so I've highlighted it for you with the different levels being highlighted in different colors. And so what you can see is one is everything's no more than 3 clicks from the homepage, but it is not as clear. And then the exact same number of categories, subcategories, and pages is in that other diagram on the right. And that shows a much better structure in terms of being logical, being something that a search engine or a user alike could follow and kind of know where they sit. When I talk about internal links, I like to borrow this concept from Kevin Indig of Link Power. His TIPR model uses external link value to impact the power of the internal links. So again, one of those things that we can only approximate, but I like to think of it in terms of link power. And there's basically 3 components to this that I've got up on the screen here. So I want to go through them just one by one, but very quickly, because we want to get to the actionable stuff. The first one is taxonomy, and the key thing here is that there may be reasons for corporate governance or logistics, for shipping, inventory, etc., that things have to be put into certain categories. Whether that's different categories of software or different categories of iPhone cases or whatever it may be, you've got your governance and your logistics that impact how those things get structured on the website. Searchers really don't care about that stuff. What they care about are the keywords that you use to describe that taxonomy, and whether it makes sense given what users are searching for. If we go up a step to the URL structure, we're talking about canonicals and nofollow, because Google's gone on record as saying, like, the actual file name or depth of the subdirectories or anything like that, they just really don't care about that. Better subdirectory structure can make it a little bit easier for them to follow what's going on, because it follows a logical pattern. But ultimately, canonicals and nofollow are just about controlling crawl. They're not really about link power. Click depth is the one that people really get confused, I think. And that's where we go back to that old thought of the click depth being 3 3 links from the homepage. You know, it's a real misnomer, I think, that's based on an old concept. So back in the beginning of the web, and I'm very much dating myself here, we used web rings to follow links from one site to another. We linked to each other's home pages in a little sidebar on our GeoCities blog, and it was always to the home page. And that's the point, right? Is that initially we always thought of crawl and user experience and everything starting from the homepage. Now we know that's absolutely not the case. So when you think of links in and links out, you want to think about how links only matter as to the depth that they are from the previous link. So when we talk about click depth, we're not talking about click depth from the homepage. I think that's an important thing to get out there in the beginning. And then anchor text, of course, is going to have some indication of what that next page is about and whether it's going to be relevant to the user's query or not. And users and search engines alike use that information to make those decisions as to whether they're going to click through on a link. But there are ways that this goes horribly wrong. One really classic example is mega menus. Now, I know everybody's thinking right now, oh, mega menus, Amazon uses mega menus and eBay uses mega menus. Yeah, they do. So does Home Depot, so does Lowe's. All kinds of really large sites use mega menus. But when they're out of balance with the rest of the site, that's when you start to have a problem. So I'm picking on this lawyer, and you could see I've blocked out his identifying information. But this is all of his navigation. This is all of his top navigation overlaid on top of itself. So if we had all the navigation window, all the navigation capabilities open at the same time, these are all of the things that are in that mega menu. The problem with that is that then that is on every single page of the site, which means that before Google gets to any of the value content, any of the main content, it has to parse through these 300 some odd links that are in menus and submenus upon menus over and over again. They're not in balance with the rest of the site. When I'm looking at a site and doing an audit for internal link power, I visualize it in some of these different ways. So Screaming Frog provides a great way to visualize this. If when you're doing your crawl over there on the right side, you can see that site structure box. Most people just totally ignore that. But if you start seeing that a massive number of pages all have the same number of inbound links, that could be a problem. If you're looking at the crawl depth, which is down below that, and you see that the majority of pages are at one particular level of the site, so in this case, we've got from the home page, again, the crawl depth is almost all at a 2. So normally we would expect to see kind of a pyramid structure here, where we're going from 0 to 5 or 6, showing kind of a pyramid of URLs in that bar graph there. So that's another clue that there's some problems there. And then here's another clue. If we use the force-directed crawl diagram, and this is under visualizations and Screaming Frog, you could see that there are some issues here as well. This may look perfectly normal to you, but if you look at a site that's got a better structure, that doesn't have quite so many internal link challenges, you will see that that kind of second color green cluster that's right outside that dark green one right in the middle, which is the home page, there are a lot fewer of those. So we're not creating much of a structure for the search engines to determine what it is that actually has value here. And then you could see this even in another way by looking at a word cloud. So if we take the anchor text and open up that word cloud, and again, I've blacked out some identifying characteristics. This is a personal injury lawyer in Los Angeles, but he does a ton of other things. And according to the way his anchor text breaks down, that's all he does. Because as you can see, those are huge. And then all of the other information, all of the other little things, the car accident lawyer and the slip and fall attorney and all of that, like, it's so tiny we can't even read it because there's just no attention paid to that. Another way this goes horribly wrong is with a bad template strategy. So this is a site that provides information about various file extensions. And this is the page for Adobe Flash. It would be just fine if we had the file extension and the file extension type, but then the file type creator there, almost all of these are Adobe Systems Incorporated. And all of those link back to that Adobe Systems Incorporated page. So what we're doing is we're creating all of these additional things that the search engine has to crawl and looking kind of spammy in the meantime, quite frankly. Whereas some of these pages would look fine because they would have lots of different file type creators. This particular one is really suffering from this bad template strategy. And if you have been around SEO for a pretty long time, then you may be thinking, are you recommending PR sculpting right now, Jenny? And no, I absolutely am not. And for those of you who are not aware, this is the theory that when you have 3 links on a page and one of them you follow it, or let's just say it's the same link like we're doing here. Let's say link number 1 and link number 2 were the same. They both link to Adobe Systems Incorporated. You don't actually get to take that link value. I hate the term link juice, but this is a screenshot borrowed from Moz. You don't get to take that link value and cut it into 2/3 instead of 1/3. It doesn't work that way. What you end up doing is actually sending less value to all of the other links that are pointing off of that page. So yeah, no PR sculpting, not a good thing. Sometimes you see a flat architecture that has really good internal linking. Now this is a screenshot from OnCrawl, which is really my tool of choice to do these types of link audits. Screaming Frog can get you the same information. Really, any of the crawling tools can get you the same information, but I just like the way OnCrawl visualizes it. So as you can see here, this site has a pretty flat architecture. Everything is pretty much at level 2 or 3. But when you look at a diagram of how all of these pages are linked together, you can see that it's much more effective than you would usually see with a flat architecture like this. And here's how it kind of lays out in that bar graph. You could see all of these different groups. And again, I'm looking at the groups now rather than the depth. But all of these different groups have different amounts of linking pointing to them. If you were to look at a word cloud diagram for this site, you would see these keywords: warehouse, e-commerce, 3PL, Amazon fulfillment. About, apparently. So that's something we might want to take a look at as kind of a troubleshooting or identification of an opportunity for optimization. But internal linking really does work. If you're looking at your SEO sessions lined up with your internal link value, then you should see a diagram a little bit like this one, where your sessions that are in the higher range on a monthly basis or a daily basis, just depending on what you're looking at, are also the ones that you're seeing a lot of in-rank for. But how can we use this in an actionable way? this client that I was just showing you is one of my clients that provides a drop shipping service. It's a little bit more than that. They do warehousing, they do 3PL, they do all of these different services. For those of you who don't know, Amazon has slowed down their delivery. I don't know if that's worldwide or if it's just here in the United States where I'm located, but they've slowed down their delivery so that they're trying to optimize delivery for essential goods, things like food and masks and uh, health and beauty aids and that sort of thing, things that people really need. Which means that a lot of these smaller shops that use Amazon FBA, which is Fulfillment by Amazon, are seeing that it's taking a really long time to get their products to their customers. So my client came to me and said, hey, we really want to do better on keywords like alternative to Amazon FBA because this is an opportunity for us to get more traffic to our site. So we took a look and saw that the average in rank, and that's on crawl's terminology, but basically we saw that there was a little bit of an off balance here, that our 10 to 99 sessions per term had a higher in rank than the higher level of sessions. So we're going to look at that one, and when we peek into that in a little bit more detail, we could see that there are basically 3 pages on the site that have some reference to selling on Amazon or Amazon FBA. And this one here at the top that I've highlighted in red, the Amazon fulfillment alternative, is definitely the most powerful one of those 3. So what I recommended to the client is use this existing page, consider consolidating that 3rd page into it so that you're not really creating that internal competition, and add a link somewhere else to the how to sell page so that you're creating a situation where you're using that in rank value to really optimize the best that you can for that keyword. Now be cautious of the link power element because there are going to be some cases in which you see a high in rank for a low in rank for a high number of sessions. Now that can be really kind of off-putting and say, okay, why would that happen? And again, if we look into it in more detail, we can see that this post has a really high in rank, but not, or has a really low overall in rank, but not a lot of links within the site. And it's creating a lot of traffic. So what we looked at was we saw that link power that Kevin Indig talks about, where we take the external link value and add it to the internal link value, was a reason that this page is doing so well. It was a featured post in the past. We had some really great inbound links to it. So even though the actual rank value of this page is a little bit lower, it's got a really big opportunity to transfer that link power throughout the site to other pages. Now this is kind of a way to dig in and get some optimization opportunities or solve a specific problem, but there's also ways to troubleshoot with internal linking. So if you're doing an audit, you might look at the force directed crawl in Screaming Frog, in which case, in this particular case, we're looking at that attorney site again, and you can see verdict settlements has an awful lot of red in there. Now that typically indicates either a 404 or a redirect or some other reason that that page is not indexable, maybe a canonical or something. So there's definitely some things there that we need to clean up in terms of improving that crawl budget. We see some in the blog as well. I would zero in on these ones over here on the right, these 2 that I've marked here, to say, okay, what are these? Because clearly they're kind of what we would call in the United States a cul-de-sac experience, so kind of a dead end. And then the other one that I would say to look at is the sitemap, because the sitemap has obviously one bad link in it that we can see, and then also there's that weird little one that's sitting out to the side. So those are all some things that we might want to look at to see if we can fix that. Another one you can look at is the directory tree graph. And I mean, I had to shrink it super small to get it to fit on the page, but then I've highlighted an area and kind of blown that up to show you. The obvious errors are things like that, back injury page that's got the red next to it. That's a problem. Again, maybe a 404, maybe a canonical, who knows. But what I find interesting about this particular look is that if you look at the directory tree graph and you see that kind of dark line points to this section, that's dark because the majority of the links are pointing to that section. So I would say to the client, is this really the most important stuff on your site? The glossary and the scholarship program? Like, maybe not. Maybe not so much. So something to think about there. Another way looking at this same graph is to look at this Lyft Uber accident lawyer thing we got going on here. And then we've got the Uber-Lyft showing as a red. Clearly this is something that the attorney has probably added in the last little bit, because we see that rideshare safety COVID-19 there. But by adding it kind of outside of the rest of the structure, he's really doing himself a disservice, because now it's just kind of this, again, dead end experience that isn't really well connected to the rest of the site. And then a final way to troubleshoot with internal linking using Screaming Frog is to look at this directory tree graph and see there's something down there all the way on the bottom that's just kind of sitting off by itself. And we could see, oh, look at that. It's a CSS style page. It's a, it's a CSS definition page. New service page. There's something here happening. There's something that's visible to search that probably shouldn't be, and that style.css may be a CSS file that we're loading that we don't actually need to be loading, which could then have a positive impact on site speed as well. So just some things to look at. If you use OnCrawl, you can look at it in a couple of other ways. You can look at page groups by depth and seek pages that aren't getting enough link power from other parts of the site, and no love for those pages. And a lot of these deeper pages, the ones that I've highlighted there in navy, are the physicians pages. So now we're looking at a hospital site, and these are the physicians pages. Now the physicians, there's like 3,000 physicians within this system, so we obviously can't link directly to all of them, but we noticed one in particular was really in bad shape. This particular page was not getting any love from the rest of the site, and it turns out this doctor, Dr. West, is a super well-reviewed doctor. She's got a 4.9 on Google reviews. So we went and looked at the internal medicine treatment page to see why she was left off of it, and found an actual error in the template that was only taking 5 physicians from each category instead of showing all of them. So little things like that, using your internal linking can really identify those issues. Another way to troubleshoot is to look at active pages. So where are the pages that are in the structure but aren't getting any traffic? And when we look at that, now there's a lot of pages showing here. And one of the things that I like to do when I'm using OnCrawl in particular is to add an additional filter to this report that then gives me the SEO active pages that are indexable, because it will show you everything that is canonical or redirected or anything like that, in addition to showing you the indexable pages. But when I cut it down to just the indexable pages, I found a couple of things that I can go back to my client and say, okay, we got some issues here. So we had a canonical problem with the events that I thought was fixed, but then when I went in and did the troubleshooting through Uncrawl, I noticed, oh, guess what? It's not fixed. It's still a problem. So we'll have to fix that. And then another one is that they've added this non-discrimination notice in Russian, Arabic, French, Spanish, I mean, in like 30 different languages. So this is just a subset of the total links that I was showing in that report. So that's another opportunity to say, let's either set this to no index or use hreflang since it's in different languages. But at any rate, it's something that we probably ought to address because we don't want a lot of pages internally that are not getting a lot of traffic to be showing up in the structure. It's just not a good system of being. You want all of your pages to be getting at least a little traffic. So don't want these ones that are getting 0 sessions. So takeaways, and I've tried really hard to catch us up here a little bit. Internal links can have a positive or negative impact in a lot of ways that we've talked about, but ultimately all of these could impact rankings. So something to think about. Make sure that you're considering your internal links, that you're using those troubleshooting opportunities when you're doing audits. And I will go ahead and open it up for questions.